Committee on Foreign Affairs and International Development.
Section 2 and the motion adopted by the committee on Tuesday, February 3rd, 2026. The committee is meeting on the mandate of the Ambassador of Canada to the United States. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to the standing orders. Members are attending in person in the room and remotely using the Zoom application. J'aimerais souhaiter la bienvenue.
I would now like to welcome our witnesses.
Affairs, Trade and Development, Mark Wiseman, Ambassador of Canada to the United States, as well as Glenn Linder, Assistant Deputy Minister, Americas Branch. I now invite Mr. Wiseman, Ambassador Wiseman, to make an opening statement of up to 5 minutes.
Merci. Thank you. Le Président, honorable members.
Chair, honorable members, thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. This is my first appearance before this committee since being appointed Canada's ambassador to the United States on the 15th of February, only 67 days ago. I intend to serve Canadians with a clear focus on advancing our national interests during what is a defining period in the bilateral relationship. As for myself, I grew up in Niagara Falls, close to the border, and studied at Queen's University as well as at the University of Toronto, where I did an internship in the École supérieure de commerce de Paris in Paris, and I also studied at Yale. Much of my career has been dedicated to strengthening the retirement security of Canadians, in particular at the Ontario Teachers' Pension Plan, as well as at the Canada Pension Plan Investment Board, and as chair of the Alberta Investment Management Corporation. I also served at BlackRock, where I managed global equities. All these roles gave me a deep understanding of North American markets as well as world markets, and helped me develop strong networks across public and private sectors, both here in Canada and in the United States. Now those relationships will be critical as we navigate the years ahead.
I represent Canada's political, economic, and security interests in the United States. My core responsibility is to manage our bilateral relationship with the U.S. In this role, I am working to help safeguard Canada's economic and security interests and to support the hundreds of thousands of Canadians in the United States on any given day. I will also lead Canada's largest diplomatic network abroad. Our embassy, 12 consulates general, and 3 trade offices are supported by nearly 600 dedicated diplomats and professionals. Our economic ties with the United States are deep and vast. We have the largest economy in the world at our doorstep, with a market of 340 million people that comprises 25% of global GDP. This brings tremendous benefits to Canada. In 2025, about $3.5 billion in goods and services cross the border every day. Nearly $1.3 trillion has crossed the border over the last year, and this represents approximately 2/3 of Canada's global trade. Canada trades more with the United States in a single day than we trade with most countries in a year. Our defense relationship with the United States, by far the largest military power in the world, is seamless, which is essential to Canada's security. NORAD remains the most integrated binational military command in the world. Close to 1,000 Canadian Armed Forces members serve in the United States, many directly supporting continental defense. We also share extensive people-to-people ties, and almost 350,000 people cross our shared 9,000-kilometer border every day through 127 land ports, plus air and waterways. However, as the Prime Minister has said, this relationship is changing. America First policies do not always align with Canada's sovereign interests or with the spirit of continental cooperation that has long defined our partnership. Nowhere has this been felt more acutely than on trade, where U.S. tariffs, especially the Section 232 sectoral tariffs, steel, aluminum, autos, and lumber, are impacting jobs and investment in Canada, creating unpredictability, threatening our integrated supply chains, and raising costs for businesses and families. The Prime Minister has been clear. Canada must build a new economic and security relationship with the United States, one that is principled, pragmatic, and anchored in resilience and sovereignty. That will be central to my work as ambassador. As we prepare for the CUSMA review, I'm working closely with Minister LeBlanc and Chief Negotiator Janet Charette. Our objectives are clear. First, to secure stable and preferential access to the entire North American market. Second, to reinforce Canada's economic sovereignty. And third, to defend Canadian workers and businesses at every turn. North American integration must continue to support shared prosperity, but not at the expense of Canada's autonomy. Canada's achievement of NATO's 2% defense spending, that target this year, has been welcomed in Washington, D.C. We remain on track to reach our 5% target by 2035, with significant investments in the Arctic, an area where Canada and the U.S. must continue to work closely through NORAD, as well as with NATO and our Nordic allies. Both Canada and the United States will continue to deepen cooperations to address common threats, including organized crime, fentanyl and other illicit drugs, and firearms trafficking, as well as the challenge of irregular migration across our shared border. Through Canada's $1.3 billion border plan, Canada has already made significant progress in strengthening its border through investments in personnel, technology, aerial surveillance, and strong coordination with the United States. The passage of Bill C-12 last month will provide our border, law enforcement, and immigration authorities with the tools that they need to keep our shared border safe and secure. Our deeper cooperation is also delivering results. Irregular border crossings from Canada to the U.S. have declined significantly, and efficiency is improving, including with the opening of a new U.S. pre-clearance facility last month at Billy Bishop Airport in Toronto. In addition, the January 22nd arrest of Ryan Wedding and recognition by the FBI of Canadian law enforcement efforts highlights the positive cooperation in our relationship. The United States is an essential partner on global issues, from the Arctic to Central and Eastern Europe to Latin America and the Caribbean. But Canada will also work with other like-minded partners to advance shared priorities, not as a substitute to the United States, but to strengthen our resilience in an increasingly complex world. Now, since my arrival, the Embassy has supported a broad range of parliamentary delegations to Washington, including the Canada-U.S. Interparliamentary Group, parliamentary secretaries, 4 committee chairs, and bipartisan members from across the country, with more on the calendar in coming weeks. And it's only been 67 days. I've had the opportunity to brief and engage with Canadian delegates from across the political spectrum who've undertaken more than 50 meetings with legislators, administration officials, and U.S. public and private sector interlocutors on a wide range of issues, from the Great Lakes to energy to borders and defense. I understand that Canadian parliamentarians will also travel across the United States this summer to places like Greenville, South Carolina, Salt Lake City, Utah, St. Paul, Minnesota, and Chicago, Illinois. And like the embassy in Washington, our consulate network will support your interactions with American state legislators from across the country to advance our interests in the United States. I want to let this committee know that the value of parliamentary diplomacy cannot be overstated. Engaging Americans not only in the capital, but across the U.S. helps to build bridges, mend fences, and strengthen relationships at the constituent level. In fact, I understand that some members of this committee will be in Washington, D.C. with me in mid-May. Now, speaking of that, on the 12th of May, an invitation went out that was only in the English language. This was an error, an unacceptable error. That has now been corrected, and the invitation has been resent in both official languages. In my view, that invitation going out in English only is unacceptable, and I want to apologize on behalf of the embassy and personally. I want to be firm in my commitment for the need to promote bilingualism in Canada and as Canada faces the world, including the United States. The demonstration of bilingualism shows our commitment to multiculturalism, multilingualism, and the type of Canada that we all believe in.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador, for your statement. I will now open the floor for questions, beginning with MP Michael Chong. You have 6 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Ambassador, for appearing in front of us today. I appreciate your opening statement. I'd like to talk a little bit about what happened this past week with Mexico. Mexico issued a formal statement indicating that Mexican and U.S. officials were directed this week to talk about 4 different sets of issues. Those talks included the tariffs on aluminum, steel, and autos. President Sheinbaum indicated she's eyeing a deal on aluminum, steel, and autos before the review of CUSMA is complete. So my question is, can you tell us if Canada is coordinating with Mexico on getting tariff relief for those sectors?
Thank you. Mr. Chair, Canada believes strongly in the trilateral nature of the CUSMA arrangements. It is my job as ambassador, working with our chief negotiator and with Minister LeBlanc, to ensure that we are raising issues, including 232, with our colleagues in the United States and in Mexico. And in fact, I understand that the Mexican delegation will be here in Ottawa in the next few weeks to meet with Minister LeBlanc and his team.
I guess my question is, Mexico is having formal talks this week on these 4 sets of issues, including the tariffs. Is Canada going to have formal talks on the Section 232 tariffs? And when is that going to happen?
Mr. Chair, we recognize that the 232 tariffs are having a very large and important negative impact on Canadian industry and Canadian workers. And you can assume that we are having ongoing discussions with both the United States and Mexico.
Or I guess my question is formal discussions. You know, I understand the minister has had phone calls, but these are formal discussions that Mexico is undertaking this week. Is Canada going to be having formal discussions on 232 tariffs? And if so, when?
So, Mr. Chair, as you know, there is a formal review process under the terms of the CUSMA arrangement. We expect that process, that formal review process, will commence because it's required under the agreement.
So on that issue, so Mexico also indicated in its formal statement issued by their ministry that the first formal bilateral negotiating round between Mexico and the United States will take place the week of May 25th. When will Canada's first formal negotiating round take place?
Mr. Chair, no date has been set for the any formal negotiating round as it relates to the review
of CUSMA. Understood. So the next other question I have is, a year ago, the Canadian government made significant concessions. They rescinded the retaliatory tariffs, and several weeks later, they suspended the implementation of the digital services tax, two major concessions to try to get negotiations going. Negotiations have been stalled for some time now. And Mexico, unlike Mexico, which seems to be moving along at a fairly steady clip, we're also getting reports that this go slow approach is a deliberate strategy on part of the government. So can you tell us why the government has decided, in contrast to Mexico, that a go slow approach is the right way to tackle not just the issues of the tariffs, like the 232 tariffs, but also the commencement of the formal negotiations of concerning the CUSMA review?
Thank you. Mr. Chair, Canada is ready and willing to commence any type of review process with the United States and also with Mexico. We are ready to do that and are prepared to do so. We will advance the interests of Canada through Minister LeBlanc and our chief negotiator, both formally and I can assure you informally at every turn, in the best interests of Canadians.
That seems to conflict with what officials on the record and off the record are saying. Premier Susan Holt of New Brunswick said that the free trade talks in the United States are, quote, not at a place that I could write home about with a lot of optimism, end quote. That's what she said after a meeting with Minister LeBlanc. And then we have Louise Blais, the former Canadian diplomat, saying that officials in Washington are telling her that the Canadian government is going slow in its approach deliberately on this. And then there was an official, a Quebec source that was reported in CBC Radio-Canada that said that when the Prime Minister talked to the Quebec Premier, that, quote, Carney told him explicitly that this slow approach was part of Ottawa's strategy. So what is the strategy? Is it to go slow, or is it to do what the Mexicans are doing and expeditiously deal with this? Well,
Mr. Chair, I'm not going to discuss the details of the Government of Canada's detailed strategy as it relates to the CUSMA review or the 232 issues here, but I will say that Canada is ready to go in our discussions. We are prepared. We have done our homework, and we are ready to proceed with each of Mexico and the United States forthwith.
Thank you very much. Next, we go to MP Stephen Guilbeault. Vous avez 6 minutes.
Merci beaucoup, you have 6 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Ambassador, for being with us here today. Thank you as well for your opening statements, recognizing in them the error that was made, having sent an invitation out to MPs solely in English. Thank you for that correction. I'm sure you understand that the Prime Minister himself finds this unacceptable. Can we take for granted that this will never happen again? We certainly hope so. I would like to advise regarding the following motion, and I'll send it through in a moment. I'll read it, that the committee reasserts its undertaking to support official bilingualism and express its concern regarding the invitation written up solely in English, which the Office of the Ambassador of Canada to the United States sent out only in English, and that we work to ensure that all be advised of the appropriate policy and that this be respected across all embassies of Canada around the world. And we will send this through to the clerk in a few moments. Thank you. Let me continue now with my questions. Mr. Ambassador, you said a little earlier, if I've got it right, that you have been in your position now for 67 days. I have a dual-sided question. First, what have you done so far, diplomatically speaking, either regarding negotiations to renegotiate the trade agreement, but also broadly, diplomatically speaking, in our relationships with the United States? So there we are, what has been done so far. And what's your plan going forward? What are your targets, your aims for your first year working in Washington?
Question. Mr. Chair, first of all, as it relates to negotiations on trade, one of the great benefits that we have is that I am the ambassador, and we also have Chief Negotiator Janice Charette working in tandem, of course, under the direction of Minister LeBlanc. And so as it relates, obviously, the negotiations on trade are, and helping to support that is an important part of my role. But it's not my only role. My role includes supporting Canadian interests in the United States and supporting Canadians in relation to the United States writ large. So a big part of that, to the second part of the question, is building relationships with stakeholders across the United States. Now, for me, in my first 67 days, that has primarily been in Washington, D.C., meeting members of Congress, meeting senior members of the U.S. administration and executive branch, and meeting both Canadian and U.S. leaders from the business and labor communities, from various industry associations, et cetera, in order to both tell the Canadian story more clearly, our importance, the importance of the relationship, and also to receive feedback and information from them. So in my early days, my role is focused, although I have been to Houston, I will be going to New York, I'll be going to Colorado in coming weeks. But in my early days, the focus has been inside the so-called Beltway. Going forward, however, my focus as ambassador, but importantly in conjunction with parliamentarians and with the support of our 12 consulates across the U.S., is to tell the Canadian story regionally as well. The United States is a big country. We must engage with business leaders, with legislators, with community leaders, and with labor across the country, and that will be a big part of my job in my first year in the role.
Merci. Il me reste un peu de temps, je pense, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you. I believe I have a little time left. Perhaps the last question then. Thank you. So you have mentioned meetings that you have held, principally in the Beltway in Washington. Could you please summarize what you've learned from these first meetings, meeting either with American lawmakers or Congress people and so forth?
I will say very clearly that the reception that I have received and the reception as the representative of Canada that I have received has been, without exception, incredibly warm. And that started with my presentation of my credentials on the 17th of February to the President of the United States and to Secretary Rubio. Americans understand the importance of the alliance and economic relationship with Canada. Do they wake up and think about us every day the way that we wake up and think about them every day? No, that's not the case. And we have to continually remind them of that, remind them of the importance of the economic relationship, remind them of the importance of the personal ties, remind them of the importance of the defense alignment that we have. But every meeting that I have had has been respectful, open, and receptive. And I have to say, I wasn't necessarily expecting that. So I think at times we have to look below the bluster, the same as here in Canada. Politics, I assume, is politics, and get down to business. And my sense, based on my reasonably large sample in the first couple of months, is that people in the United States are also wanting to get down to business, not just on trade, but on all the aspects of the complex relationship between our two countries.
Thank you very much. Next, we go to Monsieur Duceppe. Vous avez 6 minutes.
You have 6 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Ambassador, for being with us today. I, too, would like to underscore that you have said it was unacceptable, the error that occurred. Of course, that's something you had to do, but you have done so. So I thank you for doing so. Mr. Ambassador, you will be Canada's voice and thus Quebec's voice in Washington, and you are called upon thus to promote and favor our linguistic rights. And in your opening statement, you did speak to many things. It was quite broad, but unfortunately there was nothing said about the supply management system, although it has been targeted by President Trump in regard to renegotiating CUSMA. This was a little striking, given that you spoke for quite some time. And in 2024, you stated that this was a system that protects a specific group, that reduces innovation and keeps prices artificially high for Canadian consumers. So that leads to a number of doubts for we Quebecers. You're being appointed. I think you're aware of that, Ambassador. So how can you align your current position with that you had in the past? And, just 2 years ago, publicly you stated that, and now you were called to manage the situation with Washington.
Mr. Chair, first of all, on supply management, my instructions are very clear, and my role is very clear. My role is to support and implement the policies of the Government of Canada. And the Prime Minister has been clear, as has Parliament through Bill C-202, that supply management is not on the table. So whatever my views may have been or may be today is completely irrelevant to the job that I have to carry out, and I will carry out that job faithfully in protecting supply management insofar as I have a role in that, because that is the policy of the Government of Canada, and that is my job.
Excusez-moi. Donc, ce que vous me dites, c'est que...
Yes, but allow me. What you're saying here is that your position on supply management today is the same as it was in 2024, but that's of no account given that it's the government's policies that you will be defending in Washington. That's what I've just heard. We're saying it's certainly not normal that someone who doesn't think the same thing as the government be put in a position to promote and defend something that they don't even believe in. And now you've just told us that you don't believe in the supply management system. You've just said that right now. And you are also telling us that we can trust you to defend it and to promote it, supply management. This is quite concerning for agricultural producers across Quebec, I must say. And in good faith, you can clearly understand why I would doubt your ability to defend supply management if you don't even believe in it. Point of order. Chair. We have Mr. Guilbeault, I think, is a point of order because he's not happy with my question. Thank you, Chair. Look, I listened to the ambassador's testimony as well, the same as heard by Mr. Duceppe, and what he said. We can certainly check the transcript, but that he seems to have said that whatever his personal position was, he was going to defend the Government of Canada's position. He didn't say that he would be, working to promote his own opinion, and I'm not sure exactly what that is at present in any case. I think that the member of the committee is putting words in the ambassador's mouth. I think that it's important in such issues that we really respect exactly what was said. Continue, Mr. Duceppe. So same point of order. I imagine that my time has been stopped. What I understand, Mr. Guilbeault, is that the ambassador stated that he didn't want to say what his position is currently, given that last time he addressed this issue, he was against supply management. I, therefore, take it that he still is. And that's sort of what he let us understand. Diplomatically, of course, he's pretty good as a diplomat.
I believe we're into debate,
and I can continue.
Would like to hear from the witness.
Sure.
Thank you.
I'm going to say the same thing. I think we can all have our own views and opinions about answers, but I think the ambassador has made it very clear that he represents the government's position as well as Parliament, which is which has been reflected in his answer. So
Donc, si je vous comprends,
please
OK, parfait. Donc, je peux continuer?
Okay, fine. I can continue. Good. All right. So if I've got that right, Ambassador, what you're telling us is that, okay, Mr. Carney could have appointed in Quebec independence promoter as ambassador to France. But given that this is about the USA, it doesn't really matter who we appoint. That's sort of what you're saying about supply management. And this leads to considerable doubt. Another position that has really raised red flags regarding the mandate upcoming. Let's just focus on that. The upcoming mandate. You have shared on X a publication that was hostile to Quebec, saying that the 100,000 Canadians is an aim that should be respected. Do you know how much this shocked Canadians? You're sharing that publication. Do you know what it referred to, that sentence, when you shared it?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have been involved in the past, as I'm sure many members of the committee are aware, in an organization called the Century Initiative. I'd encourage anyone who's interested to contact that organization and to read the information. I am no longer affiliated with that organization. I've resigned from all of my outside positions to take on the role of ambassador. Again, my job is to promote the policies of the Government of Canada, and I will continue to do so. And I should also say my role as it relates to the United States and my role as ambassador does not cover Canadian immigration policy.
Vous êtes la voix maintenant du Québec à Washington. Vous avez une communication qui était
All right,
hostile
so you are now the voice of Quebec and Washington, and you published this concept that's hostile to Quebec. Do you think that the people of Quebec are happy to see someone who shared a publication hostile to Quebec becoming their purported representative in Washington? That's the first question. And then my second question regarding the Century Initiative, there's no mention of the Quebec nation regarding the future population aimed for in Canada.
Seems like you're making a comment rather than asking a question. We had agreed as members that this was not, the approach of today was to get a sense by the committee of the mandate of the ambassador.
En fait, la question était...
Sorry?
La question, Monsieur le Président, c'est est-ce que...
Right, but my question, Chair, is as follows. Does the ambassador understand that there are a number of doubts, of course, among Quebec citizens, seeing that he's now purportedly their voice on Washington? Is he aware of that?
I think the ambassador has clarified what.
Non, je parle de son mandat, puisque lorsqu'il a été nommé,
I'm referring to his mandate, because when he was appointed, I mean, Quebecers really pushed back. Many voices were raised, and I think if he's unaware of that, I'd like to know that. So I'd like to know if he's aware of this. That's my question.
I'll leave it to you to make any responses or comments regarding Monsieur Ducep's comments and questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It is first of all, I do read the newspapers in both languages, and I am the ambassador in the United States for all Canadians, including Quebecers. That is my job. That is my mandate. I shall faithfully carry that out. For all Canadians, and that includes Quebecers. I should also say that I have the great benefit of also working with provincial leadership as part of my role, including the 3 provinces that are represented physically in the embassy. So each of Alberta, Manitoba, and Ontario have a physical presence, and a very strong and collaborative office from the province of Quebec, also in Washington, D.C., and we are in regular communication so that I have the information that I need to represent all Canadians, including Quebecers, in Washington, and I will continue to do that faithfully.
Thank you. Next, we go to MP Ziad Aboultaif. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Welcome, Ambassador, to Committee. A Business Council of Canada surveys of CEOs found trade uncertainty, rising protectionism, and geopolitical flashpoints are making it harder for companies to plan, invest, and grow. 38% cites uncertainty surrounding NAFTA CUSMA as a leading factor affecting investment planning. Also, Statistics Canada showing that business investments sealed back as business navigated uncertainty and trade tensions over the past year. Canadian Chamber of Commerce saying that trade exports firms are shifting into wait-and-see mode. Most firms, especially smaller ones, have not taken meaningful action beyond price adjustment. Investment decisions also may be still delayed until policy clarity improve. Uncertainty, Mr. Ambassador, is hurting the Canadian economy. May you can offer some clarification?
Thank you. Mr. Chair, as an investor, I know that uncertainty is terrible. It increases the cost of capital, and as was stated in the question, it leads to people not making important decisions, particularly around capital allocation. But I want to be clear, from the point of view of the embassy in Washington, this unpredictability and uncertainty is caused by the actions of the United States of America. The 232 tariffs, for example, on autos, steel, aluminum, lumber, pharmaceuticals, and the changing nature of those tariffs is what is creating unpredictability, which I agree is bad for business on both sides of the border, is bad for investment on both sides of the border.
But Ambassador, reports showing that the reason the Prime Minister's apparent desire to delay the CUSMA negotiation, and that basically against what you said. Can you clarify that?
Thank you. Mr. Chair, as I've stated, the Canadian government is ready, willing, and able to negotiate in a detailed way with our partners in the United States and Mexico as part of the review process of CUSMA, which is a 16-year agreement. We are at year 6 of a 16-year agreement. We are willing to commence that review process. We are having discussions around the 232 tariffs. We wish to, the best we can, reduce the uncertainty, but we will not reduce it at any cost, because that is, in my view and in the view of the government, not in the best interest of Canadians.
But the cost is to every Canadian business out there, to every Canadian consumer on the delay. And seems like the delay now is Canadian tactic around this negotiation. That's what we see in front of us. There's what some of the Prime Minister have said to a former Quebec Premier. So there is base to what I'm saying or what's out there, and that has to be clarified to Canadians. So I'm expecting that you'll be able to clarify that one more time.
Mr. Chair, Canada is ready, willing, and able to commence the review of CUSMA, and we are involved in regular discussions, specifically around the 232 tariffs and beyond, to try to reduce the uncertainty that's been created by the actions of the United States of America.
In Canadian businesses and consumer bear the cost, the heavy weight on them before you say enough of that negotiation tactics, we have to call the shot, we have to do something, and we have to be clear among Canadians, in front of Canadians, to tell them otherwise what's going on?
Mr. Chair, I can't speculate on the views of Canadian business. I can only reiterate that we are ready, willing, and able to commence the review process, and we are in active dialogue to reduce the 232 tariffs that have been imposed on Canadian industry by the United States of America.
My question, how long are you going to continue negotiating? Give me a time.
Mr. Chair, I can't answer that question.
Well, you're on the negotiation table. You are our representative into the U.S. You represent Canada, and we expect a better answer from you.
Thank you very much. Next, we go to MP Rob Oliphant. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Mr. Wiseman, thank you for sharing your time with us. This is not a confirmation hearing. This is a chance for us to further our relationship with the United States through your office. I also want to thank you for offering yourself for public service again. I know I don't look like it, but shortly I'll be able to get my Canada pension. And shocking to the viewers at home, I know. But thank you for your work on such things as making sure that our Canadian pension plan is fully funded, and in your time there was successful. And I really wish you well as you continue to stand up working for Canadians and for the Government of Canada. I just wanted to talk a little bit about your role as a representative of Canada. I'm an MP, so I represent the people of my riding, but I'm also Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Foreign Affairs, so I often represent Canada abroad. I don't always agree with my government, and there have been positions in the past I haven't always agreed with. When I'm representing Canada, I agree with my government. And I was just wondering, from the previous line of questioning, for you to have a chance to affirm that that is a position you enjoy being in, and what from your past do you think will help you represent Canada and Canadians well in Washington, and what is most interesting for you in this next very challenging time?
Thank you. Mr. Chair, this is an incredibly important job. I'm honored that the Prime Minister and the Government of Canada asked me to take it on. It is at times a heavy task because of the importance, but it is a task that I am proud and honored to have. And I've told several people this is the best job I've ever had, and this I'm sure will be the best job I ever have when I am done. Representing one's country, as members of Parliament also do, is just about the highest calling, in my view, that one can have. And I take the job very, very, very seriously at every turn. Now, while I am not a diplomat, I've not served in government, I do bring skills to the table, I think, and I think the Prime Minister believed this when he asked me to take on the role, whether it be in business, negotiation, my legal background. To me, given the times that we are in the United States and in our relationship with the United States, those skills come to the fore. Building relationships, finding win-win solutions, building bridges. And I will say, that I feel in my short time in the role very, very supported by the government, but also on all sides of the political aisle here in Canada, from the business community, from the premiers. So while I have a hard task, I have to say in the early days, in spite of some of the tough questions here, which I think are good to be asked, I do feel that I'm supported by just about everyone in making Canada a success.
Can I ask you, you mentioned that there are some provinces that have offices in our mission in Washington, and Quebec has one nearby. Do you plan to engage with the provinces and territories, with the premiers and governments of those jurisdictions, because of the internet-connected nature of the economies that we need to have ready to go? Is that part of your mandate in these next 6 months?
So first of all, I have regular communication with all the provinces as required to carry out my duties, not just on trade, but more broadly. That can happen in the hallway with those provinces that are resident in Washington, D.C., but if not, others are a phone call away. I've met with most of the provincial premiers in my first 2 months. And of course, I am there to support the Prime Minister, Minister LeBlanc, our chief negotiator, in their more formal interaction with provincial and territorial leaders.
I urge you to keep the territories in mind as well. Having lived in Yukon, it's an important thing. With respect to, you have many bosses. You have the Prime Minister, you have several ministers, Mr. LeBlanc and Anand and Sidhu. What kind of a guidance have you been given from the Prime Minister in this initial phase of your work?
Yes. Well, Mr. Chair, thank you. And what I would say is that I'd repeat what I said when I feel very supported, including by the various ministers who have an interest in our relationship with the United States and in my role. There is regular communication, as you would imagine, with many of those ministers and with the Office of the Prime Minister. And that is so that I can do my job as effectively as possible as Canada's representative in the United States, but also so that I can give them information that I am picking up and that the team of almost 600 people is picking up, so that that information can be fed in on an almost immediate basis so that the Government of Canada and its leadership can make the best decisions that they can.
One piece of advice would be to keep that ADM beside you. His good advice regularly, so you're well supported.
Thank you very much. We go next to Monsieur Duceppe. You have 2.5 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Juste clarifier quelque chose.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Allow me to clarify something. Being for or against supply management isn't like being for or against like the color of the rug in the kitchen. So I'm speaking to our Ambassador of Canada in Washington. Mr. Wiseman, do you deny what you said in 2025 about supply management?
I think I had published remarks at that time. I don't think those are, I don't deny publishing that article, but I don't think that that is relevant to my role.
Oui, c'est important pour les gens au Québec. Donc, est-ce que vous reniez?
Yeah, but it's important to the people in Quebec. Do you renege on that position, yes or no?
I think my position then or my position now, personally, and is relevant. But I would say that I am meeting regularly with leaders of critical Canadian industries, including the dairy industry, including the poultry industry, including our cattle industry, including many other industries, including representatives from Quebec and beyond. And I am listening and learning about their roles and what's important to them. I am feeding that information back, including to our chief negotiator.
Parfait. Merci, Monsieur l'Ambassadeur. Merci. Et donc, vous trouvez que c'est pas important votre
Thank you,
position,
Mr. Ambassador. All right, so you don't think that your position is important for us to know, and you're keeping it yourself. Wonderful, terrific. Okay, what do you think of your mandate to defend the cultural exceptional nature of Quebec? And if you are a co-writer of a report to the effect that the population of Canada should be increased greatly without any mention of the language or nation or identity of Quebec. Do you understand that completely doing away with such an important issue, linguistic issue, in a report that had to do with increasing the population of Canada was very shocking to people in Quebec and perhaps shows just how ignorant you are of what's going on linguistically and culturally in Quebec?
Sir, Ambassador, Monsieur Duceppe, we had agreed as members that this hearing would not be a confirmation hearing. This is a hearing about the ambassador's mandate.
Oui, je parle de l'exception
culturelle. Let's try
culturelle.
to stick to that. You're going
Yes, I'm speaking
back.
of the cultural exception.
Mais,
It's about his mandate as an ambassador
Oui,
for
mais-
Canada
mais-
to
mais
the United
avec ce
States. Let's try to keep to that topic, please. Thank you.
et donc, de l'exception culturelle dans les négociations de
Okay,
la
so the cultural exception in renegotiating CUSMA, I don't see how that could not be part of his mandate.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again,
Point
my
Monsieur le
job.
Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
cavalerie à la rescousse, Monsieur Guilbeault?
Mr. Guilbeault, I see that they're sending reinforcements. You're coming in as reinforcement. I just want to remind all those listening to us that the cultural exception is not only with regard to Quebec. The francophonie exists throughout the country, and the French culture throughout Canada is hyper important to Quebecers, but it's important across the entire Federation and across the entirety of Canada. You're quite right. That makes it even better for me. Mr. Ambassador, makes it even more relevant.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will faithfully represent the policies of the Government of Canada as instructed in everything that I do, including as it relates to cultural and language matters.
You have a few seconds left.
Combien de temps?
A few,
How much?
10 seconds.
Wow, merci. Je vais revenir, Monsieur l'Ambassadeur. J'ai d'autres questions.
Okay, I'll get back to you next round. I've got other questions.
Next to MP Rood, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ambassador, for being here with us today. Ambassador Wiseman, do you believe that the old relationship we have with the United States based on deepening integration of our economies and tight security and military cooperation is over, that it's clear the U.S. is no longer a reliable partner, and that many of our former strengths based on our close ties to America have become weaknesses?
Thank you. Mr. Chair, our relationship with the United States is not over. We are adjacent to the United States. We are adjacent to the largest market in the world. That is a huge benefit for Canada and one that we have to nurture. However, it is clear that our relationship with the United States has changed under this administration due to the imposition of tariffs by the United States and a change in posture to an American first posture by the United States.
Ambassador, are you aware, that those quotes are directly from Prime Minister Mark Carney, and he seems to be taking an obstructionist approach to our largest trading partner. And recently, media revealed that the Prime Minister has explicitly told staff of former Quebec Premier that being slow is part of Ottawa's strategy. So can this be interpreted as a show of bad faith in Washington, and is it, in your opinion, a deliberate attempt to stall negotiations of CUSMA?
So, Mr. Chair, I can't. It's not for me to interpret the words of the Prime Minister, but I can tell you that we are ready, willing, and
but
able.
Ambassador, you could speak to the effect that it would have, because in your role as ambassador, that would affect your job.
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
The words that the Prime Minister used directly affect the role that you have in your job as ambassador. So do you believe that this is a deliberate attempt to stall negotiations of CUSMA?
Mr. Chair, Canada is ready, willing, and able, as is our chief negotiator, as is Minister LeBlanc, as am I in a supporting role, to commence the formal review process of the CUSMA agreement. And we are in regular discussions with the United States as it relates to the 232 tariffs.
Ambassador Hoekstra has said of CUSMA that it's not an intense negotiation. There really have been no serious negotiations since October of last year. Behind the scenes, U.S. officials are increasingly frustrated, saying that Canada hasn't played ball, that the government has decided to run out the clock, and that they see right through this strategy. Is the lack of progress being made in order of the PMO?
Mr. Chair, under the CUSMA agreement, there is a mandatory review that takes place under the four corners of the agreement at year 6. It is a 16-year agreement. The CUSMA agreement comes to an end in 2036. The Government of Canada is ready to commence the formal review process with the United States and with Mexico. And we are ready and prepared to do that review process. Not a renegotiation, it is a review under the terms of the agreement.
Thank you.
Also
Janice Charette, the top negotiator on CUSMA, said that she thought the government should get prior credit for concessions made 10 months ago on the digital services tax, counter tariffs, and legal challenges on softwood lumber. Yet, to her amazement, the president pocketed those promises and moved on. Meanwhile, 2.6 million Canadians, including many businesses in southwestern Ontario and my riding of Middlesex, London, who depend on trade with the U.S. for their work, they're very deeply worried. So has the Prime Minister revealed to you why he made the strategic error of dragging this out instead of using the leverage we had at the beginning of the talks to get the tariffs removed?
Any specific conversations I may have had with the Prime Minister around trade strategy or otherwise as advice are privileged, and I'm not in a position to comment.
The Prime Minister has said that Janice Charette is the chief trade negotiator and not you. So could you tell us what role you play in the negotiations, and can you detail the number of meetings and the substantive actions that have been taken by Canada to secure a deal thus far?
Well, my role is to support the chief negotiator, to support Minister LeBlanc, to support the Government of Canada writ large, and to build the relationships, being resident in Washington day in and day out to support those relationships across with American legislators and with American business leaders and labor leaders in support of our chief negotiator. And this is a structure of a team that is proving to be very effective.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We go next to MP Charles Sousa. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Ambassador, for being here and for your service, yet again, to Canada in different capacity. You certainly have a strong rapport and tremendous experience in the United States with some of the work that you've done in the past. And now that you're in this role, and given that you've got tremendous experience on making deals in relative terms to other aspects of business, as well as pension reforms and so forth, how do you see the common ground that Canada has with the United States? How do you see those priorities that we share that we can build upon?
Thank you. Mr. Chair, there is a lot of common ground between Canada and the United States. And I think it's easy to forget that when we are having tough discussions or when those discussions are political in nature. As I said in my opening remarks, the amount of trade that travels across our shared border is the greatest as between any two countries in the world. We are the #1 export market for close to 30 U.S. states. We're the top 3 export market for almost every state in the United States of America. There are approximately 1.5 million Canadians in the United States on any given day. Our Canadian tourists help support the U.S. economy from east to west, from north to south. We work together incredibly well, our two countries, and it's very, very easy to forget that. But we have much more in common than separates us, and we have much more common interest than separates us. And I'm quite optimistic about our relationship with the United States. Neither of us is moving out of the neighborhood. And while we have to, as the Prime Minister has said, diversify Canadian interests so that we are less dependent on the United States, having the United States next door is a huge advantage for Canada in many, many respects. And I would say we still have, although we're not happy about the 232 tariffs, we still have the lowest tariff burden of any other country in the world as it relates to the United States. So we have many, many more things in common than we have differences. In my career, my job has been to find common ground and to build bridges. And I'm confident that with our neighbor to the south, who's been our neighbor since the beginning and will be our neighbor forever, we will also work out our issues.
I see firsthand your ability to deal and cooperate with corporate Canada, and you've certainly been doing now, and I've seen you witness that with what you've been doing in Washington with corporate America. But your recent visit to the White House when you got your credentials was also very interesting, and I just wonder, how are you managing all these interests? Because sometimes what corporate America is saying isn't necessarily what possibly is being said by the White House, and I'm wondering about these shifting political dynamics and the timelines. How are you managing that?
Well, Mr. Chair, I have a fantastic team, including here in Ottawa, Assistant Deputy Linder, who are supporting me, frankly, training me, and helping me along in my role. So we have a tremendous team between the embassy in Washington and our 12 consulates plus 3 additional trade missions in the United States, who are working day in and day out to advance our interests in the United States, and not to mention the team that we have supporting us in Global Affairs Canada. So I feel very fortunate that I don't feel that this is a job, and nor could it ever possibly be a job. that one person could do. And so it is very much a team effort, and we need to be coordinated across the United States. My role is in the United States, and what we do need to do is to be coordinated with our message to Americans. We have to collect information from all Canadians and be able to translate that to influential Americans in both business and government and labor and other interest groups. And we are doing that, and we're going to double down those efforts.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We go next to MP Adam Chambers. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Welcome, Mr. Wiseman. Congratulations on your appointment. I suspect you might be wishing you booked a dentist appointment at this time, but we appreciate your presence here today. Are you familiar with Robert Lighthizer' book?
Mr. Chair, yes, I am.
Okay, and so you would be aware that in the book, Mr. Lighthizer uses an anecdote that during the 2019 negotiations, that the U.S. and Mexico were hunkered down for weeks, making a deal and negotiating, while Canada was conspicuously absent. You recall this anecdote from his book?
Yes, I do.
Based on your observation so far in your role, given that Mexico is having ongoing formal and active discussions, do you believe that we are going down a similar path?
Mr. Chair, I was obviously not part of the discussions that Canada had in putting the CUSMA agreement in place in 2019 and 2020, so I can't comment whether we're going down a similar path. I think Canada is, as I said before, is ready, willing, and able to commence the review process.
Thank you very much. Are you briefed on the strategy of the government? Like, is that something that comes up in your regular conversations?
Mr. Chair, you can assume that my job as ambassador to represent Canada in the U.S. requires me to be briefed on the strategies and policies of the government.
Right. So your choice today here is not that you don't know the strategy, but that you won't confirm it for us. Is that correct?
Mr. Chair, I'm not in a position to get into the details of Canada's strategy, as that is ministerial advice.
But you can understand how a dispassionate observer would perhaps conclude, based on stories in the media, that there is a go slow strategy being implemented?
Mr. Chairman, as I've said very, very clearly, we are ready, willing, and able to commence the review of CUSMA.
Thank you very much. Are you concerned that, there was a recent poll, are you concerned that 55% of Canadians believe that actually getting rid of CUSMA would be of neutral impact or even beneficial to Canada?
Mr. Chair, the Government of Canada believes in the value of the CUSMA agreement. We believe in the value that it brings to Canada. We believe in the value that it brings to North America, and it is our view that the economic benefits of CUSMA are substantial to all Canadians.
So, do you think that there's a responsibility on parliamentarians, on the public, leaders, business leaders in this country to make the case that this is an important relationship that ought to be maintained?
Mr. Chair, you would have seen the announcement by the Government of Canada, by the Prime Minister's office, of the appointment of the new Advisory Council on U.S. and Canadian economic relations. I think part of that council's mandate is to get information from Canadians and Canadian business, labor, and other leaders, and also to transmit.
So yes, you think it's an important relationship, right? It's an important relationship to maintain.
I think the relationship with Canadian stakeholders, Mr. Chair, is critically important.
And perhaps further question on this. Do you think it is irresponsible for politicians, for pundits, for columnists, for leaders in this country to fuel anti-American sentiment? And does that make your job difficult when you're engaging with our American counterparts?
Mr. Chair, how I feel about that is not really what's at issue.
Well, does it make your job difficult?
Mr. Chair, my job is to represent Canada in the United States. Sometimes that's difficult. Sometimes it's less difficult.
Do you think it's helpful that there are some that would like to fuel anti-American sentiment in the country?
Mr. Chair, my job is to carry out the interests of Canada, and whether things are helpful, unhelpful, good or bad, I have to carry out the same duties.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You still have 25 seconds. So.
Well, I'll just ask whether you regret that the work at the Century Initiative was misused by this government to grow the population by 3.5% for multiple years in a row.
I don't think that has anything to do with the mandate of the ambassador, which is the point of this hearing. So if we can stick to that,
I think that's a pretty reasonable question. I mean, he has to build relationships with his American counterparts, and he was promoting open borders.
Policy of the government.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I think it's a fair question. I just asked if he regretted the work was misused by the government. I think it's a fair question.
No, I know that. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Wiseman.
Thank you. Anita Vandervelde, you have 5 minutes.
And thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Ambassador. I noted in your opening remarks that you mentioned that it was quite welcomed in Washington that Canada has met its 2% NATO target and plans to go beyond that. And I also know that you have a very strong defense team supporting you. And Canada has always had strong relationships, interoperability with the United States in defense and security, not least at NORAD, which you also mentioned. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about your priorities and strategies going forward in that regard.
Well, thank you. Mr. Chair, obviously the cooperative defense relationship with the United States is very important to Canada and also to the United States. In the embassy, we have nearly 80 members of the Canadian Armed Forces, including a Rear Admiral, who helps not only day in and day out are working with our American colleagues, but are also advising me as it relates to defense policy. I will be going out to Colorado Springs to visit NORAD. And of course, we have all seen the growing importance of Arctic security, both in conjunction with the United States and our other Nordic allies. So, obviously a big part of my role is helping to further those relationships, including in procurement, making sure that Canada is getting the things that it needs to defend itself, and ensuring that Canadian defense suppliers are able to have continued favored access to the United States market. In that regard, for instance, earlier this week, I was in Washington with Vice Admiral Topshee, visiting a number of Canadian manufacturers who were presenting their products to not just the U.S. defense market, but the global defense market who had gathered. So that is part of my job. It's an important part of my job. And as I say, Canada meeting its 2% NATO commitment in the last fiscal year, we're off to a very good start, and that is not going unnoticed.
And you mentioned also in your opening remarks that your core mandate, of course, is Canada's bilateral relationship with the United States. That is in the context of a very rapidly changing geopolitical global environment, but also in the context of a broader Canadian government mandate, including domestically, to build Canada strong. I wonder if you could talk about where the work that you're doing on the bilateral relationship fits into the larger Canadian government mandate.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, the Government of Canada has made it very clear, and the Prime Minister has spoken regularly about the need for Canada to diversify. And obviously, diversifying also means changing our reliance necessarily on the United States of America. But diversifying does not mean abandoning our relationship with the United States of America. It is too big an advantage to us. It is too important to us. We are next to the strongest market that has ever been built in human history. Other countries wish they were next door to the United States. And as said earlier, we also benefit from, again, absent the 232 tariffs, very close to free trade with the United States. So diversification means, yes, lowering our dependence on the United States in trade, in defense, in other areas, but it does not mean abandoning those very, very important and valuable, that very, very important and valuable relationship. It actually means growing it to our economic benefit, as we've seen in defense. But it may mean growing our other relationships even faster and therefore becoming diversified. But it's not a trade-off in my view.
Any time? No?
Yeah, we're out of time. Thank you. We're going next to MP Duceppe. You have 2.5 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When you took up your role, you immediately presented yourself, Mr. Wiseman, as an international banker and fund manager who would be able to deal with the Americans. Speaking of tariffs and duties, I am from a forestry region, Lac-Saint-Jean, which is deeply affected by the lumber issue. It's the largest employer of forestry in my region. I imagine that you know the amounts now sleeping in the coffers of the lumber countervailing duties. Do you know the amount?
I believe the amount is close to $10 billion.
Exactement. Et donc, ventilé par province, ça équivaut
Correct.
à...
Broken down by province, then, that's about $2.5 billion for Quebec. That's 155 direct and indirect jobs. Sometimes we think it's merely a regional sector outside of large centers, but it keeps up a lot of small businesses, and also there are businesses in even Montreal that depend on it. Do you have a strategy or a vision for the negotiations on this? It's not solely merely new tariffs. It's also the countervailing duties linked to these tariffs that hurt. We don't think the government is doing quite enough in negotiation. This is the fourth or fifth tariff war on this issue. What's your view of it?
I'm well aware, even in my brief time, of how important the lumber issue is to Canada and Quebec, any number of provinces, including Quebec. It's not just a 232 issue. It's not just a CUSMA issue. This issue, as the member has stated, has been going on for a long time. It comprises countervailing duties, anti-dumping levies, and also now 232 tariffs. And what I can say is this is on the front burner in terms of the need to try to get some resolution of what we see as unfair and unjustified tariffs on Canadian industry.
Il y avait une proposition qui était faite par l'industrie et backée par les syndicats.
The sector made a proposal backed by the unions, which was a government buyback, Canadian government, which would buy back part of the countervailing duties to allow the sector to benefit from immediate funding. Did you hear anything in Washington about whether that was discussed at all? We heard that some unions on both sides of the border had been discussing it.
I'm aware that there's been discussions that have taken place, but I'm not aware of the specifics.
Thank you very much. We go next to Monsieur Groyle. You have 5 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hello, dear guests. Mr. Wiseman, You are our new Ambassador of Canada to the United States as of 67 days only. I think that things aren't getting off on the right footing. In 2024, the Globe and Mail published your statement about being against supply management, and you are a manager of a pension fund that wants to bring millions of immigrants into Canada, nothing to do with French. And recently, you sent out an invitation merely in English, and even the Prime Minister has said that this is upsetting. Are you the right person to be playing this role for us?
Mr. Chair, I believe that the Prime Minister has confidence in my position. He has appointed me and has continued to support me.
A simple question now. Are you in favor of or not in favor of supply management? Yes or no?
Views on supply management, positive or negative, are not relevant to carrying out my role in representing the Government of Canada's positions.
Okay, you say that your position on supply management has no effect on your playing your role?
Mr. Chair, my job, and it's been very clear, is to support the chief negotiator and also to support the Government of Canada's position, including Bill C-202.
In the past, you openly spoke up against supply management, just as President Trump has done. Do you feel that you would be a weakness in the current negotiations, given that you are in agreement with President Trump's opinion?
Mr. Chair, I don't think I've ever been in agreement with President Trump's position on this subject and many others.
And still, in 2024, you stated that you were against supply management, which is the same position as President Trump's.
I just want to address my colleague. I think he's answered the question numerous times, and he's indicated that his job is to...
Avec tout respect, Monsieur le Président, il répond pas à ma question.
I think
En
we
tout
should...
respect.
No, of course.
With due respect, he's not answering my question.
It's not a confirmation hearing. We had a discussion before in the committee. This is about the mandate of the ambassador, so let's try to stay as close to that as possible.
Dans votre mandat, on est 343.
In your mandate, 323 MPs in Canada who are in support of supply management. And in the past, you have not been in support of supply management. We are negotiating with the United States, and even yesterday, the U.S. government was saying that they hope to penetrate our market. Will you defend it?
My job is to defend, to the best of my abilities, day in and day out, the policies of the Government of Canada, and I will continue to do so.
Okay, je vais poser ma question, Monsieur le Président.
All right, I'll put my question differently, Mr. Chair. The positions of all MPs is in favor of supply management and defending it. So is that the government's position, and do you have a mandate to defend that position?
Mr. Chair, yes.
Merci beaucoup de votre réponse.
Thank you so much for that clear answer. I am from La Beauce, which is along the border. We do a lot of business with Americans, and we have a number of exchanges with them in steel, lumber, as you surely know. As of a number of months, we are dealing with extraordinary tariffs that do us a lot of harm. We have the impression that you're not voluntarily moving ahead quickly to solve this. Is this just a false impression? Because when you talk to people in La Beauce, companies, and you say it's 5 months and you still haven't negotiated, what's that about?
Mr. Chair, the Government of Canada and as a representative in Washington understands the tremendous strain and hardship that the 232 tariffs are putting on a number of Canadian industries and a number, therefore, of Canadian communities. We believe that these tariffs are unjustified. We believe that they are outside the bounds of the agreements that we have in place with the United States of America. And we are working very hard and aggressively to try and reverse the impact of those 232 tariffs.
Merci, Mr. Wiseman.
Merci.
Thank you, Mr. Wiseman.
You still have 36 seconds. So
Donc, non, ça va aller. Merci beaucoup.
No, that's fine. Thanks. So you said you were going to work hard. What are your strategies in the upcoming days and weeks to move ahead on negotiations with the Americans?
One of our strategies is to meet and influence as many important people in the United States as possible. That includes members of Congress. We've seen dozens of them even in the first few weeks that I've been on the job. It means members of industry. It means labor leaders in the United States. And it means, importantly, getting out to state legislators as well. And I've already, in my short time, I think, met somewhere in the neighborhood of a dozen and a half governors across the United States. We have to keep putting the pressure on day in and day out. And as I've said earlier, it's important to understand we think of the United States every morning when we wake up. They don't necessarily think of us. We have to remind them of the importance of the relationship to the United States that Canada represents.
Thank you very much. We go next to MP Marie-France Lalonde. You have 5 minutes.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Wiseman, congratulations on being appointed to this role. I know that I and my colleagues have been saying that you've been there for a few weeks, and your experience, I know ahead of time that you will make good use of your experience, your prior experience. Let me get you back to something. The Prime Minister recently announced creating a new advisory committee on Canada-U.S. economic relations. A number of sectors will be sharing expertise on the Canadian side. I'd like to hear you on cooperation that you now benefit from or that you will be having with this advisory committee on Canada-U.S. economic relations, please.
Chair, the new advisory committee, which was announced on Tuesday, I believe, and will be chaired by Minister LeBlanc. It will help to provide advice and guidance to our chief negotiator, and by extension, it will also provide help and guidance to me. We are in a difficult situation with the United States. We should not deny the difficulty of the situation we're in. As a result of the unjustified 232 tariffs, Canadian businesses are facing hardship. Canadian communities are facing hardship. Canadian workers are facing hardship. And so we need, quite frankly, all of the help and advice that we can get. And I believe that the Prime Minister's announcement of the Advisory Committee on Canada-U.S. economic relations broadly will help to support us with the information and advice that we need from a wide array of viewpoints, a wide array of industries, a wide array of regions across Canada to help us make better decisions. As I said earlier, I feel in my role as part of the team that is responsible for advancing Canada's cause with the United States, that I feel very, very supported. And I think that this new advisory committee will provide even more support, guidance, and at times a diversity of views to ensure that as we develop our negotiating strategy, as we develop our positions, that we are doing so with as much information and input as we can possibly have. And I believe that as an investor, that's my experience. As an investor, more information, more analysis allows one to make better decisions. And so we need to gather as much information, opinion, views, and analysis. And I believe this committee is in furtherance of that.
Merci beaucoup pour ces commentaires, parce qu'effectivement,
Thank you so much for sharing that, because we do indeed see people representing several sectors of the economy there, but also, political sectors, unions as well. So I was very proud to see who had been chosen to sit on this committee to make it up. So in this line of questioning, you yourself were mentioning your experience in investment in your prior roles. But I would like to hear you on the Canada's main strengths that you yourself will put forward in your trade discussions in your new role as ambassador.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Canada is in a very fortunate position. In many respects, and the Prime Minister has said this, we have what the world wants and needs today, be it energy, be it critical minerals, be it agriculture, and a incredibly talented and well-educated population. We are the envy of the world, and in many respects, unfortunately, what is happening in the world away from us is making our strengths come even more to the fore. So we are in a stronger and perhaps increasingly strong position because of the benefits that Canada has, and some of those benefits, I think about benefits as either being nature or nurture. We have the nature in terms of our natural resources and the geography that we benefit from, and we have the nurture by having a human capital and also policies that allow us to appropriately exploit those resources for our benefit. So I think Canada is in an incredible position today. I have to say, being the ambassador to the United States for Canada is not an easy job. In today's world, but I wouldn't choose any other country to want to be the ambassador of the United States for. I think we are in a position of strength as a country, and I think if we can harness those both natural and developed advantages, we are going to be in a very, very good position in our relationship with the United States and our relationship with the world in decades and decades ahead.
Thank you very much. We're starting our fourth round with MP Kyle Seaback. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Ambassador, thank you so much for being here, and I want to take the time to thank you for your service to Canada. It's a very important role. Canadians are depending on you and others. I want to talk about the 232 tariffs, so if you could confine your comments to the 232 tariffs. When was the last formal negotiation meeting where positions were exchanged with respect to the 232 tariffs between Canada and the United States? Just the date.
Mr. Chair, I don't think I should be speaking here about specific meetings that have taken place. But I can tell you that there are ongoing discussions on almost a daily basis.
Ambassador, I know you've had ongoing discussions. The minister says this all the time. I'm having conversations. We're having a conversation right now. It's not resolving anything. And I don't think it's a confidential secret when the last actual negotiation took place. We all know that former Prime Minister Trudeau flew down to Mar-a-Lago to have a negotiation. So I don't know why you're keeping this so secret. It's widely reported in the media that the last formal negotiation took place about 7 months ago where offers were exchanged. Is that accurate or inaccurate? And if it's inaccurate, when was there actually another formal meeting?
Mr. Chairman, we are having ongoing negotiations and discussions with the United States. And the one thing I will say...
Ambassador, I'm sorry. Of course you're having ongoing discussions. If you weren't, you wouldn't be doing your job. And when the Prime Minister appointed you, he said you were a core member of the negotiating team. If you weren't having negotiations, you wouldn't be fulfilling your mandate. That's not my question. So I want to take you back. My question is, when was the last formal round of negotiations where offers were exchanged to remove the 232 tariffs?
Mr. Chairman, again, we are having ongoing discussions. And what I will say is in my career as a business leader, an investor, a deal maker, I've never done a deal on the front pages of the newspaper that has been successful. And I think our...
Ambassador, I'm not asking you for any of the details that were discussed. I'm not saying please table what the offers were. I can't imagine that it's confidential information or relevant to the negotiations when the last negotiation took place, because the Americans were there. They would know what the date is as well. Why are you so reluctant to give the last date of negotiations where formal offers were exchanged on the 232 tariffs?
Mr. Chair, there are ongoing discussions, and some of those are reported, some aren't. You will have seen, for example, that Secretary Bessent and Minister Champagne met last Friday. I was party to part of those discussions. There was other reported meetings between Minister LeBlanc and Secretary Lutnick.
Ambassador, you're not going to answer my question. I've tried 4 different ways, so that's fine. I don't need to hear about what the discussions are. You've said very clearly today that Canada is ready, and these are your words, ready and prepared for formal negotiations on the 232 tariffs. Mr. Greer has said they are prepared to have negotiations, formal negotiations. So why haven't they happened?
Mr. Chair, I think what I said is that Canada is ready, willing, and able to commence the formal review process of CUSMA.
Okay, so then why haven't those formal meetings taken place? Mr. Greer has said they're ready as well.
Well, we are also ready, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so something's happening. The Americans are saying they're prepared. You're saying you're prepared, but no one's meeting. So what's the holdup?
Mr. Chair, all I can do is to reiterate that on the Canadian side, under the lead of our Chief Negotiator, Janice Charette, we are ready to commence the CUSMA review process. And, Mr. Chair, I want to say this is a review process. This is not a negotiation of a new agreement.
I understand how it works. I used to be the trade critic for the Conservatives. I know it's a review process. Okay, so the 232 tariffs have been in place for almost a year now. You've talked about how it has caused the strain on Canadian businesses. Has there been an economic analysis prepared that you're aware of how much this costs Canadian businesses every month?
Mr. Chair, yes.
Oh, you do have that. So you're aware of what the cost is to Canadian businesses every single month of delay in resolving the 232 tariffs?
Mr. Chair, the Government of Canada does detailed economic analysis of the impact of the unjustified tariffs that the United States has put on Canadian business, and understands I believe the Government of Canada understands very well these unjustified tariffs and what they're doing to Canadian business interests.
So if delay was a tactic, you know how much it's hurting Canadian businesses?
Thank you very much. We go next to MP Rob Oliphant. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is obviously not the first time Canada has faced tariffs under Section 232 of the 1962 Act, nor is Canada the only country facing the so-called metal tariffs. When we were facing these before in the first Trump administration, not only did we have an advisory panel of experts, but we also promoted both parliamentary diplomacy as well as a sort of track 2 diplomacy, which would engage civil society, business, labor unions, community groups, arts organizations, academics, to look at the strong relationships we have. And I'm wondering what thoughts you might have on the value of your conversations at the executive and the congressional level, which are important, but then also the conversations you and your embassy could perhaps foster among those who cross the border every day. My mother came from Niagara Falls. We have family in Lewiston. We have family in Chicago. I went to school in Chicago. I have relationships. Could I be of use in a way other than being an MP? Is there a way that your embassy can help us engage Americans at a level of conversation that would be helpful for Canadians?
Thank you. Mr. Chair, I think it is important to build relationships. I think it's important to remind American leaders, be they business leaders or political leaders, and to remind ordinary Americans of the importance of the relationship with Canada. As I've said, we share a tremendous amount in common on many, many levels. And so this form of engagement, I believe, is very, very critical to furthering the position of the Government of Canada as it relates to our relationship with the United States in trade, in defense, in many, many other matters. And one of the things that I've been reminded of and learned about in my early days as the ambassador are actually the number of things that work unbelievably well between our two countries. So, for example, on Monday at the embassy, I hosted a lunch with the International Joint Commission, which is a commission that was struck under the 1909, I believe, Boundary Waters Agreement. And Americans and Canadians are working day in and day out to resolve issues as it relates to the international waters that flow from Canada to the United States and from the United States to Canada. That type of engagement, showing the importance of cooperation, showing the importance of the business relationships, showing the importance of the cultural relationships, goes a long way. And as I said, I think there's a very important role for parliamentarians, including members of this committee, to help in that as well. And as the ambassador, I'm very encouraging of parliamentarians from all parties. I've now welcomed parliamentarians from all parties to the embassy. And I encourage you to continue to do that, both as parliamentarians and as ordinary Canadians. And we are going to engage with Canadian business, Canadian labor leaders, Canadian cultural leaders, with their American counterparts, to remind the United States of the importance, the depth, the breadth, and the richness of the relationship between our two countries.
I would just caution you, beware that in my first 2 years in my role representing Canada around the world, I gained 15 pounds. The luncheons can kill. So keep your health in mind as well. Diplomacy is a lot about eating. You talked earlier about the network of consulates, trade offices we have around the United States. We also have key interests in border states. And so the relationship between our premiers that are on border-facing states, as well as governors and state-level representatives, becomes important. Has that been part of your briefing? Has that been part of your mandate as well?
Thank you. Mr. Chair, our provinces and territories that border the United States actually have a particularly important role to play. I've already worked with many premiers, asking them to help the Government of Canada with our relations, particularly with governors from adjacent states. There's a number of, I will tell you, I forget the acronyms of the various organizations, but there's one in the Northwest. There's one obviously in the Northeast and Atlantic provinces. And I think those relationships between our premiers and their counterparts in the governor's offices, particularly on border states, is incredibly, incredibly important. Those border states feel the presence and the economic connection to Canada in many respects more than anywhere else. And so whether it's North Dakota or Maine or Alaska or Washington State or one of the other 9 states that border Canada, I believe that there is a special place for our provinces and territories to help us in delivering the message, and I've already reached out to them.
And senators go to those governors' meetings as well. It's really quite important. We all engage. We have opportunities to do that. Briefing notes from your embassy are important for us to make sure that we are up to date on the status of trade issues. I come originally from Sault Ste. Marie.
Sorry, I'll have to interrupt.
All right. Steele.
Next is Député Duceppe. Vous avez 2 minutes.
Oui, merci, Monsieur le
Member
Président.
Duceppe, you have 2 minutes. Thank you very much. My questions won't be as tough as those put by Mr. Oliphant. Mr. Ambassador, my leader today suggested that he could meet you to advise you of the particularities, linguistic and economic, of Quebec. Do you intend to pick up his offer to meet him one-on-one to discuss your mandate with regard to Quebec?
Whenever the leader is available, I will make myself available.
Okay, fantastique. Merci beaucoup pour ça, Monsieur l'Ambassadeur.
That's terrific. We thank you in advance, Mr. Ambassador. We've heard about your past. It's perhaps been a little tough on you here, but we were not acting with nil intention because we really have heard of real concerns expressed by people who are affected by the sectors that you have touched on in the past. So yes, supply management, a suggestion to triple the population of Canada without taking into account the specificities of Quebec linguistically and culturally. What do you think of these people who have these doubts? I understand that you want to represent all Canadians, including Quebecers, but there has been, as you know, you do read the papers, as you've reassured us, there are some issues about your past history and your past opinions. What do you say to the people who are concerned about this, given the context that we now have with the United States?
Mr. Chair, you know, one of the things in my role is I get to meet a lot of people. And one of the things that I've made sure about is that I spend time in the province of Quebec and with Quebecers. One of my first meetings with business leaders anywhere was with Minister Joly in Montreal, where I met a roundtable of business leaders from Quebec. I will, in fact, be back in Quebec City and Montreal next week, meeting leaders from the province. I've also had very, very constructive meetings with the former Premier, and I will be welcoming the new Premier to my office in coming weeks as well, not to mention excellent engagement with Quebec's representative in Washington. So part of my job is to make sure that I understand the views of the people that I represent. Those are views that come from across Canada. They're varied views. They're different views. But it's important that I understand them, and I'm making a very large effort, in particular, to understand the important views from the province of Quebec.
Thank you very much. We now go next to MP Michael Chong. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. So we have no date as to when formal discussions are going to begin between Canada and the United States on the Section 232 tariffs. We have no confirmation of what the government's strategy is with respect to the 232 tariffs. And that's creating, in my view, and in the view of many, a great deal of uncertainty. And so I want to raise the alarm bells on behalf of Ontario's auto industry. Our auto industry relies on the U.S. market to survive, to exist. 85% of all vehicles produced in Ontario are exported to the United States. And as you know, you said you were privy to economic data. Canadian auto manufacturers say the industry has absorbed $5 billion in tariffs since 2025. And according to Stats Can, motor vehicles and parts dropped 21% in January. Exports of motor vehicle parts and motor vehicles and parts dropped 21% in January, and passenger car and light truck exports fell more than 32%. I just want to quote two industry representatives, Brian Kingston of the Canadian Vehicle Manufacturers Association, who said, quote, "You cannot have a commercially viable automotive plant facing tariffs of that size." And Toyota has said, and they're the largest, as you know, auto assembler in Ontario, they have said that the tariffs have made manufacturing in Ontario, quote, unsustainable. And recently, Honda and Toyota have formed a new Canadian industry association. And my interpretation of that is that they are extremely worried about where this is all going. The auto sector in Ontario employs 100,000 people, and they want to know when relief is in sight. And the lack of answers on this is frankly quite concerning. The government keeps saying that we have the lowest tariff rate of any country in the world. Well, that's of no consolation to the automobile manufacturers in Ontario that have paid $5 billion in tariffs and who've said that this is unsustainable and that you can't have manufacturing plants in Ontario with this level of tariff. And yet the government won't tell us when the tariffs on Section 232 tariffs on automobiles are going to be resolved, unlike Mexico, which is actively negotiating on these issues this week. And the government, our government here, and by the way, this is not an investment bank here, it's a democracy, and this is the heart of the democracy, and Canadians have a right to know what's going on. We don't know what's going on. So do you understand how this lack of transparency, these lack of answers at this committee, which is a formal public forum, is driving a great deal of even more uncertainty in Ontario's automotive sector about what the future of the industry is in Ontario? Do you acknowledge that?
Mr. Chair, as I said earlier, uncertainty is a very bad thing for the economy. It's bad for business. It's bad for investment. The uncertainty in this case has been caused by the unjustified 232 tariffs that the United States has put
Agreed.
on.
Ambassador, with respect, I agree with you on that. But there's even more uncertainty layered on top of those unjustified 232 tariffs because of the government's unwillingness to tell us what is going on. We get more information from the government of Mexico about what they are doing through statements that they are issuing, and we get a dearth of information about what is coming from the Canadian government. We read news sources about anonymous, high-ranking Canadian sources, about unnamed anonymous Quebec sources telling us what is going on. This is the forum for us to hear officially from the Government of Canada what exactly is going on. We have been having these debates now for some time in Parliament, and we don't get any information. And there are, like I said, there are families who go to bed every night in southwestern Ontario, where I'm from, who are scared to death about where their future paychecks are coming from. Manufacturing in my part of Ontario is plummeting. It's shrinking. People are worried. Information is important. And so don't you agree, and will you take back to your government the need for more information to come from the government about what the approach is when we are going to have negotiations on Section 232 tariffs? Because the industry is running out of time. You can't keep paying $5 billion in tariffs and keep these plants open. At some point, something is going to break.
Thank you very much. We go next to MP Samir Zuberi. You have 5 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président, et merci, Mr. Wiseman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Wiseman, for having joined us here today.
On your new posting and the important work that you're doing on behalf of the Government of Canada. We appreciate you being here for the full 2 hours. I wanted to just continue the conversation that we were having. Actually, my colleague, Mr. Oliphant, was asking about, and you actually elaborated in his answers on the interactions that you were having with governors in the United States. If you could continue on that theme and share with us how you're engaging with the Executive, Congress, and other governors beyond the border states. But how is that, those interactions, how are they going, and what are the results of them thus far?
Thank you. Mr. Chair, there's a number, as there are many constituencies in Canada, there are many constituencies in the United States. And so in my early days, what I'm trying to do is to interact with as many of those constituencies as possible. In my first 2 months, I've met with dozens of members of Congress, both members of the House and members of the Senate, particularly with making an effort to meet Republican members of Congress, particularly making an effort to meet members of Congress from border states. In addition to that, in terms of the engagement with the United States, I've met with a number of members of the executive branch, the administration of the United States, because they are the ones that obviously are putting the policies in place, and including the unjustified 232 tariffs. So trying to understand their position, explaining Canada's position, and importantly, explaining the importance of Canada to the United States. For example, the previous member was talking about the auto industry and the importance of the U.S. market. Well, it's also important to remind both American industry and American political leadership that Canada is the single biggest buyer of U.S. manufactured automobiles and light trucks outside of the United States of America. We are both a producer and a market for many American regions and for many American industries. In terms of specifically the governors, I did attend the National Governors Association meetings. That was in my first or second week on the job in Washington. I'm in regular dialogue with certain state governors on the border, and I will be traveling to various regions of the country to meet people on their own turf, which I think is also very important. Finally, I want to reiterate the incredibly good work that our consulates do across the United States. The way that we're set up is that each of our consulates has not just their own state where they're located, but a number of states that they represent, so that we have a direct representation and plan for each of the 50 states across the United States of America. And that sort of coverage model is particularly important, and our consuls general and their teams are integrated and will be even more integrated into our plan going forward. So that's what I've done in the short time I've been there, but I will be doing along with my team, and I'm incredibly well supported and very well briefed for all those meetings, and we will be doing more of them. There can't be white space in our calendars.
That was a very full answer. I have about 30 seconds, so I'll leave it to you to share what you'd like with us in the remainder of this time.
Well, I'm just going to go back to what I stated sort of to one of the early questions, Mr. Chair, which is that I'm incredibly honored to have this position. I am humbled by the trust and confidence that the Prime Minister has placed in me. I recognize the importance of the role to all Canadians across the country. And I, will not be perfect. Mistakes will be made. But where we make mistakes, we will correct them. We will try not to make the same mistakes again. And I will carry out this mandate to the very best of my abilities tirelessly in support of Canada and all Canadians and the Government of Canada.
Thank you very much. We will have a shortened round, the final round, beginning with MP Kyle Seaback. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And again, Ambassador, thank you for being here. I share my my colleagues' deep dissatisfaction with your sort of unwillingness to answer very direct questions on things that do not seem to be confidential in nature. When the last formal negotiations took place on 232 tariffs, the American ambassador has been clear on this, that it hasn't happened for at least 7 months. Your unwillingness to confirm that to committee I find deeply troubling, because we're here to represent Canadians. I have a lot of auto workers in my riding who have lost their job at the Brampton Assembly Plant, others that work at Honda who are deeply concerned that they may lose their job, and I think your lack of forthrightness on this is deeply troubling. You did, however, say that you're in possession of an economic analysis of the economic damage that is being done to the industries suffering from the 232 tariffs. And I would ask that you provide that economic analysis to the committee so that we also can understand what the economic damage is happening to those affected industries. Will you provide that those documents to the committee?
Mr. Chair, I believe some of those documents are constitute privilege and advice to ministers.
But the ones that aren't, can you provide those to the committee?
I will get back to you on that.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I'll get back to the committee on that. I'm not experienced enough to know exactly which of those documents fall into.
Okay, but I would like to have your agreement that if there are economic analysis documents that are not privileged, you will produce them.
Mr. Chair, I'll get back to the committee on our ability to produce those documents.
I really, sir, don't think that's an answer. I don't want privileged documents. If there are economic documents that are not privileged, will you produce them for the committee?
Mr. Chair, I will get back to the committee on my ability to produce those documents. I just don't have the awareness.
I'm not asking about your awareness. I'm saying you cannot produce confidential or privileged documents, but if there are unprivileged or confidential documents, will you produce them? I'm finding your obtuseness on this deeply troubling.
Point of order. Point of order, Mr. Chair. The witness has answered, and the question has been asked 5 times now, and the answer has been received, and it is inappropriate to continue to badger a witness who is a public servant.
Well, my understanding is that the witness has committed to learn about the process of responding to committee requests for documents and abiding by our process.
So he's undertaking to do that. Okay. Ambassador, given that there is an economic analysis that has been done on the cost of these 232 tariffs, therefore the government knows what the cost of delay is. So if it turns out that there has been a strategy to slow roll negotiations or delay negotiations, it's being done with the full knowledge of the economic impact it's causing Canadians. Would you agree with that statement?
Mr. Chairman, as I've stated earlier, the Government of Canada, our Chief Negotiator, Minister LeBlanc, are ready, willing, and prepared to commence discussions. There's no hidden strategy, Mr. Chair. We are ready to go.
Well, Ambassador, it's just actually been reported in the Wall Street Journal that Prime Minister Mark Carney has said officials are ready to negotiate or wait it out until the U.S. addresses some of his country's concerns. So if part of the strategy is waiting it out, as the Prime Minister has said, reported in the Wall Street Journal, the waiting out strategy is being done with the knowledge of the economic harm it's causing.
Mr. Chair, I can just reiterate that we are ready, willing, and prepared with our Chief Negotiator and Minister LeBlanc to commence the formal review process of CUSMA whenever possible.
Okay, so then I'll ask again, why hasn't that meeting taken place then? Because the Americans have said they're ready, willing, and able as well.
Mr. Chair, it takes 2 sides to have a meeting.
Right, but if both sides are saying they're ready and willing to negotiate and they're not meeting, obviously something else is going on. I might not be the smartest man, but I can certainly figure out that. So what's going on?
Mr. Chair, I believe I've answered the question to the best of my ability.
Is it because, as reported in the Wall Street Journal, that the Prime Minister is waiting for the U.S. to address some of his concerns? That's why there's no meetings taking place?
Mr. Chair, I can't speculate as to why meetings are or are not taking place.
But you're the ambassador, and you say you're ready and willing to have meetings, and somehow you don't know why there are no meetings. I think that's deeply troubling. You should know why there's no meetings taking place.
Thank you very much. We go next to MP Van den Bell. Do you have 5 minutes?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Ambassador Wiseman, for being here. And I noted that earlier you talked about how well supported you feel. I think all Canadians feel that we all, parliamentarians included, we need to have your back because it is extremely important that we are all pushing in the same direction on these important files. So thank you so much for answering our questions. I just switching a little bit. You mentioned in your opening remarks that you have, of course, 600 diplomatic and professional staff, and nobody today has asked you about the consular work that is done by those professionals and diplomats. If you perhaps could comment a little bit about some of the work that we're doing on the consular side.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, the relationship, I know we and all Canadians are very focused on the tariff situation, particularly the 232s. I know that we are all very interested in the CUSMA review that will take place. But I think it's also important to remember the breadth and depth of both the relationship with the United States and also the scope of work, as the question indicates, that takes place in the embassy and consulates. So there is a tremendous amount of consular work that goes on, protecting and ensuring that the rights of Canadians in the United States are respected to the fullest extent of the law, assisting Canadians in need, particularly when tragedies take place, as you saw our consulate in New York getting involved immediately upon the horrible events at LaGuardia about a month ago. The job of our embassy and our consulates is to support Canadians when in need, and also to promote Canadians. We're working hand in hand with our friends in the United States and in Mexico, for example, on the upcoming FIFA World Cup. I was briefed on that today by Secretary Van Couverden, because it's a very important part of our relationship with both the United States and with Mexico. It's a great opportunity for us to share and to celebrate together, but also to make sure that we can do so in a way that Canadians, Americans, Mexicans, and those from around the world that come to experience the World Cup on our continent will be protected and be able to do so in a safe way. We have cultural and art connectivity as well. Some of that takes place in our embassy. And of course, this is a very important year in the United States as well. And we will help and celebrate with our American friends the 250th anniversary of their nation. And so I think it's a very good point. We're very focused, and we should be focused on economic matters, on trade, on unjustified tariffs, on the CUSMA review. But each and every day, those 600 people, whether they are from law enforcement, consular services, cultural attaches, our Canadian military, the RCMP, et cetera, are working hand in hand with Americans and their agencies to ensure our mutual interests.
You said earlier that part of your job is to talk to Americans about how important the Canada-U.S. relationship is to them. I think we only have about a minute left, but could you comment on what some of those things are?
Well, part of the job, and unfortunately, Mr. Chair, a lot of it seems to involve eating. That is true. But it is to interact socially as well with Americans. In due course, I've only been there for 2 months, and I've made the decision that I'm yet in a position to engage with American media. At some point, we may decide strategically that makes sense. But I am the representative of Canada in the United States in every part of that, and it is a critical part of my job. I recognize that. I am a public figure, and so that means that I have to be front and center as our representative, and it's not just on economic matters. And I'll give one more example, which is in July there will be a game between the Washington Nationals and the Toronto Blue Jays in Washington, D.C., and it's going to be Canada Day. and I'm going to be practicing because I think I'm going to get to throw out the first pitch.
Excellent. We look forward to that next. And final questions will come from Monsieur Duceppe. You have 2.5 minutes.
Oui, merci, Monsieur le Président. Une autre
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So another part of your work, Mr. Ambassador, and I have had the luck of meeting several ambassadors from a number of countries, given that I am the critic for my party in international affairs. So one of my as I know, part of the work of ambassadors is to know in great detail the history of the country they represent. I've met ambassadors who are able to really explain the history of their countries in great detail. And so I wish to remind you, and I'm sure you know, Mr. Ambassador, so it is in your mandate to be able to discuss and explain to others the history of Canada. So if I were to ask you, Ambassador, if someone were to ask you what the Quiet Revolution was in Quebec, for example, how would you summarize that? How would you go about that if you were asked that question?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's a great question, and one of the things I'm quite proud of, and I described my education at the beginning, is that I indeed have a degree in history from Queen's University. That was my first degree, and in particular spent a tremendous amount of time during my studies studying, broadly speaking, Canadian history from coast to coast. Now, I will say that was a number of years ago. Some of it is a little bit rusty. But, Mr. Chair, I agree with the question. My job is to represent Canada, to explain Canada.
Oui, la question était vraiment précisément comment vous
Right, but
décrivez.
my question is more specific. How would you describe the Quiet Revolution in Quebec to anyone putting that question to you, just overall?
Mr. Chair, I don't think that it's my role and this committee's role for me to talk about the Quiet Revolution, but I will agree with the question that I do have to broadly know, as part of my role, the nuances of Canadian history, including history of Quebec, and I do spend quite a bit of time explaining to Americans the nature of Canada's formation.
J'aurais pas de réponse sur la Révolution tranquille, Monsieur l'Ambassadeur.
Okay, so I'm not going to get an answer about the Quiet Revolution? I just thought you were going to give me your view right away, your explanation.
The opportunity to ask the same question.
Bien décevant, non, Monsieur le
Président. We will conclude
Very
the
disappointing.
meeting, both Ambassador Wiseman and Glenn Linder for appearing before the committee and for your testimony.